Hello, everyone, and welcome to our office hours with data research and accountability. Today's topic, we're going to be looking at analyzing and applying student learning data at the elementary level. So I know on the screen it says to mute your microphones and put your name in the chat, but since we have such a small crowd, would you mind taking turns and unmuting yourself and introducing yourself? Let us know who you are and your school and maybe something you want to learn from today's session.
My name is Jen Barber. I am from Rollsville Elementary School, and I am the school improvement chairperson, and so I'm just attending these to learn as much as I can about different data that I can help facilitate collecting for the school improvement process, as well as just helping staff. And my role at school is I'm the AIG teacher.
Thank you.
Good morning. I am Cheryl Fenner, the principal at Southeast Raleigh Elementary School, and I'm glad to be participating in the webinar today. My purpose is just to pretty much get a refresher and wanted to see if there was any additional information out there that can be used as we will move into our second year at Southeast Raleigh Elementary. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, good morning. It's Joyce Ratley. I'm at Washington Elementary, and I just want to become more familiar with some of the data and collections that we have available at the elementary level. This is my second year as AP, so I want to be a little bit more effective in utilizing that for interventions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. This is Ralph Chu. I'm assistant principal at Beaver Dam Elementary School. I want to learn more about the elementary side of data as well. I've just transitioned in April to the elementary school level from the middle school level, so I'm just here to learn.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon now. This is Trevor Roberts, principal at Walnut Creek, and I'm sort of listening to the board workshop at the same time, so I certainly have to apologize for that. But I'm just here to learn about the various aspects of the data that's available to me as a principal.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to, this is Sonia Stevens from Data Research and Accountability. And I just want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody for coming. We'll try to keep this in a conversational format. The presenters are very knowledgeable about the data that they're going to share, and they will welcome any questions that you have as we go through all of the data components. So feel free to just, as Melissa said, to jump right in and ask questions. And hopefully we'll be able to answer the questions. If we can't, we will try to find the answers and get back to you. So enjoy.
Thank you, Sonia. And as Sonia just mentioned, I'm Melissa Smith, K-12 Assessment Specialist at DRA. And with me today, I have Ann Sylvie and Serena. Ann Sylvie and Serena, you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, this is Serena Halstead, Performance Assessment Specialist in Data Research and Accountability.
Hi, this is Jan-Sylvie Boykin. I'm a data analyst with School Accountability.
Thank you, guys. So let's do a little bit of a check-in. So if you can go to this bit.ly, bit.ly/data feelings, and let us know which one of those pictures resonated about how you feel when you think of data, which image comes to mind. So it's bit.ly/D data feelings. Let's see what folks are saying.
Can I vote?
Sure.
I'm jumping for joy.
I'll put your comment in.
Actually, I'm changing mine. I'm the dog with my hands covered since we didn't have, we didn't get all of our testing data this year because kids didn't test.
I'll give about 30 more seconds. So as someone mentioned, we didn't have as much end of year data this year. So maybe a less of the overwhelming feeling and some jumping for joy, but some of us are probably going like this in anticipation of opening up the school year with not the usual data that we're used to and having to make decisions. So the data, the two platforms that we're going to talk about today, one of them, the first one is going to be the Wake Data Dashboard, and you can find that in your Wake ID portal. And the other one is going to be through the Soar reports, which is through Oasis. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute if you are able to pull those up and follow along with us if needed. So again, in your Wake ID portal, we'll start with the first one, the Wake Data Dashboard. And while you do that, let me pull up mine. All right, so one of the first dashboards that we want to talk today that would be of interest to elementary level folks is the number knowledge test, or the NKT dashboard. And so the number knowledge test, as you know, is our screener for math that we use in grades K through 2. And so when you first come to this first dashboard here, you have information that's broken down by school. And so you can here filter, you can find your own school. You can filter by school year. You can also look at subgroup data. And you have a little bit more here in terms of ethnicity. And then you can also look at your school compared to Wake County. So is there anyone on the call who'd be willing for me to use their school as an example so I can filter and show you so you don't have to see this whole list?
Sure, you can use Walnut Creek. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Walnut. So here I can go to Walnut, and let's look at what was happening in terms of Walnut for the 18-19 school year. So Walnut could then look at how they did in terms of BOI, MOI, and EOI. And then they can look to see here, if you hover around, you can look to see which kids were in your intensive, which were strategic, the percentage of kids in strategic, sorry, and then proficient. And then you can look at those changes, right, as they go from the beginning of the year to middle of the year and the end of the year. And I know sometimes we get calls when you guys have your meetings, if you're a principal and you want to see how do you compare with other schools in your area, you can then add to that group. And again, if you wanted to break out in terms of certain subgroups, you can also do that here as well. The other tab in this dashboard shows you a breakdown of your subgroups for each of your grade levels. So if we came over here, again, I will look at, you start off with all, but let's say Walnut Creek. Need my glasses. Wanted to again look at their data, drill down a bit and look at their data for that 18-19 school year. They can then again look at how they were doing their subgroups, and then they can look at individual levels. So they can look at their kindergarten class, their first grade class, and their second grade class to see the movement from over the 3 periods. And then they can look at that for all students, and then they can drill down for the ESL, students with disabilities, and then they can keep doing that, drilling down. Are there any questions about the number knowledge tests database before I turn it over to Anne Sylvie? Okay, so I will stop sharing. And I'll let Anne Sylvie showcase the EOG database.
Can you see it?
Not yet.
Well, and Sylvia is pulling that up. How do you guys use it? Do you use the NKT data a lot? Any of you principals or others that are on the call? I'm just curious.
This is Cheryl Fenner at Southeast, and yes, we do use the NKT data when we are looking to identify student groupings and how to serve them, and of course celebrations for the students all the time.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Daryl. Go ahead, Anne Sylvie.
All right, so I'm going to show you the dashboard for EOGs, which has one for each of the subjects. And they're very similar, so we're only going to concentrate on one subject, because once you know how to navigate one, you can do the other one. I will do math, because math has just one little difference from the other ones. So the first tab shows summary for the district at the top, and then for each of the area. And there's no filter or anything. This is static. You can't move it to anything. Now, the thing that I wanted to point out is, remember that when in 1819, the way the levels are in the EOGs changed for math. So you're going to have, level 1 and 2 in the 2 previous years, but then in the third year, 18-19, you have just not proficient, which combines the level 1 and 2. And that is the only subject that has that in 18-19. And reading and science would have been into that standard this year, but there's no EOG, so it'll have to be in 2021. The second tab is very similar to what we just looked at, the NKT. It has the district on the top, and then we can filter by school, by year, by grade level, by ethnicity, race, and by test. And if you want, you can look at all the schools. They're all displayed there. And again, you have level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 for 16, 17, and 17, 18, and not proficient level 3, 4, and 5 for the years after that. So should we pick a school that I can filter on? Anybody want to volunteer?
You can use Walnut Creek, like I used, if he doesn't mind.
No, that's fine.
So I'm going to get Walnut Creek. Over here. Filter. And so if you do not change anything in the grade level or the test, this is the combine all the grades that would have tested. So grade 3, 4, and 5. But you could go and say you just want grade 3 or 5 or 4 or 5, or you could also just go and pick the test. That's the same thing. Picking the grade of the test is actually the same thing. And then you could filter by ethnicity if you wanted to. And then you can compare that to the district, or you could compare it to any school that you want. And if I'm not mistaken, you can also pick the schools that are in a certain area. So I'm pretty sure I would have to go back and select all the schools. And then let's say that I'm interested in only one area, so it'll limit to the schools that are in that area that you can compare yourself to. And then the third tab goes even deeper. But it is showing the number of students instead of percentages. And it'll show you every year by grade and then by ethnicity. And then by test, but the by test is really the same thing, that by grade. Because each grade only takes one test. And if you hover on any of those dashboards in one of the area, it gives you what you're looking at. White, grade 4, level 5, and then what is the school and how many students were in that level for that test. All right, is there any questions for the EOG dashboard? Then
Can we have some new data to put in there?
Can
we have some new data?
New data to put in the EOGs?
Yes. I was just making a joke. Since the kids didn't test, we don't have any updated data.
So this will stay that way until the end of next year. If we're lucky, we'll have some next year.
Yeah.
Okay, I will pass it along to Serena.
do I need to do here? Once. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Can you say what screen you're seeing right now? Are you seeing the performance task screen?
Yes.
Okay, you're seeing that screen, right? Good, thank you. Yes, so this is data for the performance task that we administer to 4th and 7th grade students in the district. And so with the performance task that we administer, it has 3 areas that we're looking on in terms of scoring. So we score for critical thinking, as you can see at the top right here. And we also score for writing evidence, effectiveness, and then also for mechanics. Now, here you're on the screen, you're seeing just about all the schools. And this information is good here if you want to do some comparison. Is it okay for me to use Walnut because everybody's using Walnut? I'll just continue on that note.
Yes, that could be the default school.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so if I wanted, let me just go quickly down to Walnut here. One more tab up. Okay. Now, notice when I click on Walnut, everything is grayed out. So I'm only focusing on Walnut Creek. And so I can, on the side here, as you can see, we have the school names. We can uncheck. I just decided to scroll through, but I could uncheck and go directly to Walnut Creek. And then I could select the school year. And so far, the performance task has been administered for 2 years. So we have data only for those 2 years. And then I could also filter by ethnicity. As you can see right here, you can also uncheck the box all and then select the ethnicity that you want. The nice thing I like about this is that you can actually select 2 groups to compare at a time, right? So if I wanted, I could choose, for example, Asians and Hispanic. It filters it nicely like that. Another thing, I could also choose gender. So if I only wanted to focus on, say, for example, all Asian students, and then I wanted to only look at the females, how are the females doing? Then I could do it like that as well by unchecking that all box and selecting female. All right. Now, another featuring tool here that I wanted to look at is the critical thinking. So critical thinking, as you can see here, critical thinking is the maximum score that students can receive. It's a 3, right? For writing effectiveness, the maximum score that students can receive is a 4. And then for writing mechanics, the maximum score students can receive is also a 4. So 3 for critical thinking and the others are out of 4. Our maximum is 4. Now, say for example, I'm looking at critical thinking. So I'm going back, I'm going to click on that box that says critical thinking. At the top right here where you see my mouse, I can actually click on it and I can choose to exclude. Are you seeing that here? So I can choose to keep only, or I can exclude. Now look what happens if I go to exclude. So it's only showing me the other levels. I can maybe say, oh, I want to just focus on all the students that got a level 1, right? So I can go ahead and just exclude, right? So in terms of if you're showing your staff this maybe in one of your meetings, you can quickly have them go through that, or you can just pull it up on screen and show them how are the students doing, how many students do we have at level 1, level 2, and so on. Also, you can do that same thing for the other two, which is writing evidence and also writing mechanics. Now, very friendly, easy to use tool. And as more information is added, so you'll continue seeing years. What I like about it right now is that we just have 2 years, so we can simply compare what is going on in year 1 when we started this performance task to what is going on now with the current year. And keeping in mind, you know, there are changes to curriculum, as well as maybe teachers are getting more comfortable using the curriculum. So all of that would interfere with how students are performing with these different criteria that we are assessing on for the performance task. Are there any questions?
So I'll pose the same question to the principals and staff that are on call. Are you using your this performance task data at all? We've done 2 years of this, and so we're just curious. Well, I guess I should say 2.5 years, because we did have some schools to administer the performance task this year. And we're waiting on those scores to come back for those that did submit those. But we're just curious to know how many of you are using these data. Anybody?
Jen Barber at Rollsville, we have not used the data at all. As a matter of fact, we didn't even get the results from, you know, the year before until well into this year. So it has, or at least, I don't know if we got the results earlier, but it didn't come to our attention really. So as of right now, we've not used this data at all for the performance assessments.
Okay, that's good information to know. Before COVID happened, we were exploring the option of administering the performance task in the fall, so that the results would come back in a timely manner, so that schools would be able to use the data a little sooner. One of the things that we did do with the results is that we did send the results to the teachers for the students who were in their current grade. So for example, we gave the performance assessments to 4th grade students, but we sent the results to the 5th grade teachers, so that they could at least get an idea about how their students performed on the performance task when they were in 4th grade. But we do realize that, you know, that you guys do get the results back a lot later than when you would prefer them. So thanks for that feedback. Any other questions or comments about the performance assessments? Okay, if there are none, are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see EVAAS on the screen?
Not yet. You're on your Wake Connect page.
Oh. Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. Where did my EVAAS go? Okay, what about now?
Not yet.
Not yet?
You might have done share a window instead of share your screen. So you might
Probably.
be in a different window.
I do that every time. Let me try it again. Let me do my entire screen. Anything yet?
Nope.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Click on it. That's what I was not doing. You need to click and then it'll let you share.
Okay, what are you seeing now? Somebody else may have to share for me.
We're seeing, yep, we got it.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, you guys. I mess this up every time. Okay, so the dashboard that we are going to talk about now is the EVAAS dashboard, which is what I have pulled up. And so for those of you, which I think probably almost all of you have probably set in on an EVAAS session that I've done. So you can see from this screen that it is a lot more simplified than what is generally in the EVAAS system. So the purpose of this particular dashboard is to give you some quick data that you can use in conjunction with other data, because the question is, okay, well, we look at EOGs and that's given us information about performance. You can look at your performance tasks, which gives you a different kind of information, different type of data point that you can use for your students. And then the EVAAS data is going to give you information about how students are growing. So when you think about EVAAS, one of the things that you do have to remember is that for school-wide accountability, the range for meeting growth is, for the index, is between -2 and +2, which is this middle section that you see here. And anything greater than +2 is going to be in that exceeded growth, or the blue area, which is the color that you're accustomed to seeing. And then anything less than -2 is going to be in the red, which is over on this side. And so just like with the other dashboards, you have the option of filtering by school, so you can look at all schools. And if we wanted to just use Walnut Creek or any of the schools, you could select on, click on those schools by unchecking the all box and then going in to find the school. So here's Walnut Creek. So if you just wanted to look at the one school, then you can see what that data looks like. I highly encourage you to look at multiple schools, and in fact, I encourage you to look at schools that are similar to yours in terms of demographics and achievement, because then a lot of times teachers will say, well, we have a particular group of students, and so we can't really grow those kids like other schools are able to do. Well, you can use this dashboard to determine if that is really true. So if you were to, find schools that are similar to yours, or if you look, well, you can find schools that are similar, and Walnut Creek, I'm not sure what schools you consider to be similar, but I'll just click on a few schools, and then that way you can, as a principal, you are able to determine, well, is that really true? Am I, by looking at 3 schools who are, if you could just, pretend that these schools are similar to Walnut Creek, are these schools very similar to mine? And how do I do in comparison to those schools? Are the majority of our kids by, any one of these ethnic groups or subgroups, are they making growth in comparison to other schools that are similar? Keep in mind that the state has set the growth standard at 0. So if you look at the very bottom, and I can't, let's see if okay, yeah, I can move that out of the way. So if you see at the bottom where it says growth index, that standard, is set at 0. So basically what that is saying is that if a student does at least this well in the current year as they did in the previous year, regardless of the data points that you look at, if you're comparing percentiles, if you're comparing scale scores, or even if you're in EVAAS and you're comparing the, they put in there the National Curve Equivalent scores, which are the NCE scores. If you take the difference between any 2 of those variables from one year to the next, if that score is right around 0, then the kids have done what was expected of them. If that score is greater than 0, then they did more than what was expected of them. And then the same is true for if that score is less than 0, meaning that it's in the negative. And so, as I mentioned, that green is the center area here. And so what you have to pay attention to, however, are those subgroups that are on what I like to call the wrong side of zero. So in other words, even though you may be in the green, meaning that your score is between -2 and +2, and you got a green color and it says that you met growth for that year, you can still celebrate because that's good, because you did make growth for that year. But if that number is, again, what I like to call on the wrong side of zero or in the negative, but still within that meets expected growth range, that is still a cause for concern, because the closer you get away from zero, the closer you're going to be into the does not or did not meet category. And so you can see here, and even, looking at Austin Ridge as an example, they were in the green for their, this is the multi-group, at a -1.8. Well, you can see what the trend is happening. And then even if you look at their white or Caucasian students, they're at a -2.3. And so that in itself is something that is also very telling, because then you might want to ask the question, are we focusing on one particular subgroup more than another subgroup? Are students falling through the cracks? Are we assuming that students, maybe they're high-performing students, and so maybe teachers are making the assumption that because they are high-performing students, they can't make a lot of growth. And I always like to bring teachers back to the definition. We want them to do at least as well in the current year as they did in the previous year. So if a student comes to you as a high-performing student, then the ask is that you keep them where they are. When kids come into a classroom at a particular level, at the very minimum, we should keep them at that level. The minute or the year that they start falling behind where they came and started, then to me, that's a bigger discussion, and something needs to happen or change to see some different results. So that is the Evos dashboard. So far, our tech services team has only put one dashboard in here, just primarily to look at schools overall so that schools can compare themselves to other schools, to make the determination about how they're doing in comparison to their area, how they're doing in comparison to schools that are similar to them in terms of demographics. So with that, I will stop and take any questions about EVAAS or about this particular dashboard in general. I'll open it up. Okay, if there are no questions, I think the next thing that we want to share is to go into the Soar Dashboard, which is in OASIS. And answer me, were you going to pull that up or should I?
Go ahead. We hadn't decided who was going to do it.
Okay, so if you will just give me a minute, I can log into that. So are you, let's see. Can you guys see this on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So OASIS is where the SOAR rosters are placed. And the SOAR rosters are the rosters that Ann Sylvie, who's on the call and is going to talk to you about the rosters. She is the person who did a wonderful and continues to do a wonderful job creating these rosters that you guys would see on a regular basis in Quicker. So as you know, we no longer place the rosters in Quicker. They now are in SOAR. And I know a lot of principals have forgotten that, because even during this time that we've been at home, I've gotten questions from principals saying, when's the next time we're going to get an updated roster? Because I'm not seeing that in Quicker. And, I always respond, the reason you're not seeing that in Quicker is because we don't put them in Quicker anymore. They're not placed there. So they are placed in OASIS. The nice thing about them being here is that now teachers actually have access to their own roster. And then there is a school roster that only, not everybody in your building, but a certain number of people. So I think that would be principals, APs, counselors, test coordinators. I think that is it. Maybe intervention, maybe, I don't know, Jen, do you have access to this as an intervention person?
I do have access to it, and I'm not sure if it's because of I'm actually AIG, but I'm also I share the testing coordinator position also. So I'm not really sure. But to be honest, I think most AIG teachers have that student rosters tab. Yes.
Yeah. So they may be a group that has access. So I'm not sure if the intervention people do, but if for some reason you want someone else to have access that's not automatically granted access, then you would just have to fill out the above line access form like you do with other tools that we offer in the district and submit that to the help desk, and they can provide you access. And the reason is that these rosters contain individual student information. And so that's why teachers only have access to their particular class. And then the other people who have access to the school rosters are those people that are working with students in all classes and across all grade levels, So before I let in Sylvie talk about the school level rosters, I will tell you that the teacher reports and the student rosters here, I'm not going to actually go into one, but just to show you how easy it is for teachers to go into, you can select a school, and then you have to select this particular roster. And then it forces you to actually select a teacher. So teachers, of course, would only see their teacher name. And then if I were to select a teacher, then it would ask me to select a class. Well, I have to select a teacher with the class. I just want to show you. So you can see here, this teacher has a variety of grade levels that they can select for. So if the teacher only wanted to look at math, for example, then that's the roster that would be pulled up for that, that particular teacher. And I will say, if you are training your teachers on these data, and when we go into the school roster, it's the same type of data, it'll just be for that particular teacher. But for teachers, when they, or if you are a principal and you go in, or just like me, if I were to go into this teacher's roster, once it creates the Excel spreadsheet, the naming convention includes your employee ID number. So I always remind people that you need to change that, the name of the file that you just created, because if you're going to share that file with someone else, then you would also be sharing your employee ID number as well. What most schools do is have folks on their team, on their leadership team, work with teachers to help them understand what's in this roster, because it is a really good tool for teachers to be able to see what students are coming to your school or into their classroom. So they would be able to see a complete test history of the student. So I'm going to go into school reports and then student rosters. And what we're going to be looking at is this particular roster here, which is called SOAR. And you can see what SOAR stands for, Student Overview Ad Hoc Report. These other reports here are reports that are used by your school improvement team when they're doing their quarterly reviews. So remember if you might recall in the rosters, Ann Sylvie would prepare a second tab when grades were released. I believe you did it by quarter, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that was quarterly.
Okay, so she would provide that as that tab quarterly, and the information would be pre-populated. And so what our assist team did was take that same information and just put it into a separate report. So here's the report for elementary. So you see here, there's actually two SOAR reports. So this first SOAR report SOAR roster is the roster of your current students, meaning these are the kids who are currently in your building for whatever grade year. for whatever school year. The nice thing about the rosters being in SOAR now is that our SIS team was able to attach them to PowerSchool. So as kids move in and out of your building, if they have data that goes with them or comes with them, then it will be reflected in this roster the next day. That was a limitation that we had with the rosters that Ann Sylvie provided, because it was just based on one download at the time that the data were downloaded. This particular roster gives you information about your students as it says, in the previous year. So if you wanted to see, and it's the same roster that Ann Sylvie would provide, which was the end of year roster. So it gives you information about them, the students who you had the previous year. So eventually this is going to be rolled over, and this will become the 1920 year, because we'll be in the 2021 school year really soon. It's forcing me to select a school. Does anyone want to volunteer, or shall we continue with Walnut Creek? I'm not going to show any students. Going once before I get to the W's. Going twice. Okay. We're going to go with Walnut Creek. So select a school, then I'm selecting the SOAR report. So Ann Sylvie, I'll follow your instructions.
Okay, I didn't know I was presenting that, but okay.
Oh.
So we're going to check the demographics. Just go in the little arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And we will take the student ID. And then we can take the grade level and more ethnicity.
So you can see you have a whole host of things that you could select. And if you think about the roster, remember how large that roster is, because we were putting everything in there. This is all the same information, but now you have a little some voice and choice in terms of what it is that you want to look at. We'll also look at AIG, as well. But these are the areas that you want to look at. If Ann Sylvie had us go over to the arrow, if we had not gone to the arrow to like here to open up the drop-down menu, and if, instead, if you had just clicked on just the demographics, then all of the information would be checked. And so, for example, we're not going to go into attendance, but I just want to show you. So I'm just checking this box for attendance. And if we were just to look at it, you see how everything is checked. So you just kind of have to think about what your question is that you want to answer before you go into the data. Okay.
And it helps to go through those tab and click on the little arrow so you see what means what. For instance, academics is going to be the grades, and testing is going to be the state grades, and the assessment will be more quarterly and things like that.
So did you want to do anything with the grades? So these are your quarterly grades for students.
No, because we were presenting things about testing, so.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so testing.
So you could choose any EOGs, or I didn't choose any grades originally at the beginning, because we were also talking about the NKT, which will be only for kindergarten, right?
Right. So even if you, so let's say, for example, we'll take grade 3 reading. So this SS is scale score, the reading level, and if you hover over it, it tells you the reading achievement level. This relative achievement level tells you how much, if you were looking at students who were level 4s, then it would tell you how much of a level 4 a student was. Were they a low level 4 versus a mid-level 4? Then also in comparison to a high level 4. And the reason that's important is because as you begin to group students together, you might take the high level 3s, so a 3.8, 3.9, and low-level 4s, the 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, and put them in a group because they're essentially the same student in terms of their ability level. So we believe looking at that relative achievement level is really important, because especially if you're looking at the lower levels, because if you have a high level NP, not proficient, because remember we changed the state changed and combined levels 1 and 2, but if you have an NP, how far do they go up, Ann Sylvie? The NPs all the way up to 9?
Yeah, but
So-
the NP is only for math, so it's not going to be for reading yet.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So if this were, if we were looking at math, then you would want to, maybe pick an NP 0.5. So that would tell you that that student is very close to becoming a level 3, but they're not quite a level 3. And then your 3.0s, those students would be very similar together. And you could group them together. So, and then you also have percentiles. So if you wanted to look at the percentile scores. So it just depends on what grade level you're looking at and what kind of data you want to see. And so I'm just going to do all reading.
And that will show the EOGs that are historical. So a 5th grader, if they were there to take the test, will have grade 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I mean, 3 and 4, actually, because they would only get 5 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
You're not
Is
going to
there
have
any?
grade 5 in an elementary school.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
You're not going to have a grade 5 in the elementary school, as far as the test.
Okay, so we can uncheck those.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else we want to look at?
I don't know.
So if you wanted to look, why don't you explain the prediction stuff that you have in here?
The prediction.
Like the projected reading percentile.
That's EVAAS. That is the percentile that EVAAS calculate that were predicted for the student at the end of the year for their EOG.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the difference when you actually take the EOG. You would have the difference between the actual percentile and the predicted, and that allow us to define the estimated growth that we define.
Mm-hmm. And so I'll just check those 3 just for our example. And there's other pieces of information here. If you wanted to look at assessment information, you can see NC check-ins are there, and M-class data, NKT data. Again, this is going to end performance tests. So what we were looking at in the dashboards earlier were all summary data for the school. So now if you want to take that and kind of peel that orange down and dig deeper into the data, this is where you would come to look at individual students. There's also survey information that's here, as well as LEP data. So if once you have your question, which is how are our students performing on the EOG, and what are their EVAAS, what is their EVAAS scores, what would their EVAAS scores be telling you? So you have everything checked, then you're going to export a file. And what it's doing is actually creating an Excel file that's downloaded on your screen. And I'm just going to open that up. So can you guys see my file?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to widen the columns a bit. And I'm going to turn on my filters. So this is what you get. So if you wanted, which I do recommend, you put in the student's first and last name here so you can actually see who the students are. If you wanted to look at a particular grade level, I've turned the filters on, so now I can filter by grade level to narrow this file down some. If I wanted to look at ethnicity and race, I can select which ones. If I wanted to only look at Hispanic students, then I can look at that. If I wanted to look to see if any of those students were considered EOG in both reading and math or just reading, then I could select those as well. And then here you have all of your test data outlined. And so one thing that you might want to do, depending on once you narrow this down, is to figure out how you can get rid of some of the blanks. So you might start with the grade levels because you know the kids in the younger grades are not testing. So then you might just want to look at 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders just to see what kind of data you have available for them. So now here you have some data points and you're able to look to see if I wanted to look, if I was grouping like I was talking about with the relative achievement level, then I can look to see, you know, where are my high flyers, which are the kids that we really need to pay attention to, and who are those kids that are very similar, even though they may have various, they may have different achievement levels. Are there any questions about how to create your spreadsheet using the SOAR data?
I have a question, but it's not about creating the spreadsheet. It's about, okay, so I noticed that there is an option for the NC check-ins data in there. And I was wondering how quickly is the data input into there so that, you know, after we take the NC check-ins, I guess how quickly would that information be available in that particular roster?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And as soon as you submit your data to DPI and we get a data file back, and Ann Sylvie, maybe you can help me if I'm wrong on this. If we get that, once we receive that data file back, then we will actually our student information services team will upload the data. So it really just depends on when we get the complete data files.
The testing office creates that file and gives it to SIS. So I don't know what their exact timing is. We would have to ask more than likely.
Okay, but it's generally after that window, right? Because I know some schools might finish earlier than others, but I don't think that they do anything until we get until the testing window has been completed.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so where she was talking about, so let's say you wanted to go back and pull in the NC check-in data, you'd have to go back and that's the one drawback from this, and actually start over. So you'd go back to the OASIS file. You know, you select your school, select the student roster. My screen is freezing. Oh, here it is. And then I believe it was under assessments, or was it under testing?
It was under testing.
Okay. So here. So then this is the NC check-in data. So if you wanted to look at that, and you can look at it by quarters, so then you would just select which of those you wanted to see, and that will populate on your spreadsheet. And yes, that is under testing. Thanks for that question. Any other questions? So hearing none, that's all we have. I think it's 1 o'clock, and we're more than happy to stay on the line if you guys have other questions that you want to ask specific to your school, we can stay on the line for a few minutes and take those questions. If not, then thank you very much for coming and sitting in with us. Just a quick, I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but we've been going back and forth about these office hours, and we realized that doing them during the summertime may not be the best option, but we wanted to test it out before the fall. And so what are your thoughts about us doing this? And if you have questions, I mean, we had set presentations, well, kind of, because we had tools that we were going to show, meaning the dashboards and Soar, but we were thinking of just doing office hours that could be topic-based or just being available for you guys to ask us questions about your data. Just any thoughts on that idea? And you can tell us if you don't think it's a good idea. We know we're data research and accountability and not the most exciting group, but that's okay. You won't hurt our feelings.
We're a thrilling department. I don't know what you're talking about, Sonia.
We are. So no thoughts?
This is Jen Barber again. I feel like the 2 sessions that I attended were both extremely helpful, and I feel like I have a good understanding of where to go to get my data. So I'm not sure that I would actually need another, topic-based gathering or whatever you call it. But if you, having office hours open for those of us that are preparing, to launch our new year and looking, figuring out what data to look at, that might be helpful.
Okay. Thank you for that. Because we were, and trying to figure out time, and I know your SIP teams meet at different times. Or even if like a PLT, for example, because the reason we're doing this is because we know that next year is going to look different than whatever, than what it's going to be, what we've had in the past. So, for example, if if there's a grade level PLT that's going to be sifting through some data and there's a lot of questions about EVAAS or, any one particular thing, then we could just hop on a call and just be available for questions that they have, or have people sign up and say, okay, in 3 weeks, our PLT is going to be talking about EVAAS. Could someone then hop on a call and answer our questions or demonstrate? Because of course we could share our screens and explain all of the data that way. So those are some of the things that we were thinking.
That sounds fabulous. Do you guys, would you also include, or do you have the expertise to actually, if a grade level was sitting there digging into their data, would you actually, help understand what the data means as well as showing them where to find it?
Oh yeah, that's really what we like to do. We like to help you interpret the data and tell you if that we couldn't go into like a curriculum. Although there are some people, Melissa and Spencer and Serena are very curriculum oriented people, and they were teachers in their other life. But they're so they could, or any of us could sit and talk with teachers about what are some good strategies, but we could, depending on whatever strategies they were working on, say, well, you might look at these data because this is what they tell you and how it can inform, whatever the strategy is that they're working on.
Right.
So yes, do that.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to hop off. This was very informative. I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for joining us a second time. And to the others, please feel free to hop off or ask any other questions. We'll stay on for just a few minutes, but if you want to just log yourself off, that's fine.